Hey, what's up everybody? Brett here with Good Talk Gaming, back for part 2 of this Total Warhammer 2 free-for-all that I played the other day. In part 1, I showed you guys the battle from my perspective as Karak Kadrin, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I thought that was an amazing free-for-all. I got to use all of my Dwarven units to their fullest potential. I was pretty proud of the tactics that I used in that map. And today we're going to shake it up. I mentioned in the first episode that this time I wanted to do it from the perspective of the Empire. And that's because this battle ended up kind of splitting into two 1v1s and then kind of a final battle at the end. So if you saw part 1, you already know how it ends. I hope that doesn't spoil this for you because this was quite a fun and interesting battle. So I'm going to start by introducing the Empire's build. Here they have these Empire Knights, which they're going to send out to perhaps scout or kind of block up the enemy's advance. They have a single unit of Outriders with grenade launchers. Very cool. Not a unit you get to see very often, but could potentially be very great. Very great. Could be very good in this matchup, especially against the undead. Let's see here. We also have 3 units of handgunners and a front line of swordsmen and spearmen with shields. So very low, very cheap, very low tier infantry front line, with the Empire player pretty obviously looking to use their ranged advantage to do the damage. So they have 2 units of mortars. I think it's an excellent choice for a map like this with this type of terrain and choke points. Mortars should be able to lob their missiles over, and yeah, should do great. And units tend to bunch up whenever there are smaller corridors like this, so you should be able to get a lot of value. And one of my favorite units in the game that just does not get enough love, the steam tank. So 160 armor causes terror. Not going to be relevant in the upcoming fight with the vampire counts, unfortunately. They are unbreakable. Leadership is not an issue. They will fight until they die. And they have very solid 380 range, so they can be used as a very effective artillery piece, just as a cannon. And when the fighting devolves into pit fighting, you can send them in, and they have 180 armor-piercing weapon strength. Very, very powerful unit. Very expensive, so you want to get the most out of them. And for the hero and lord of the Empire army, a Bright Wizard, once again excellent against the vampire counts. And they took Balthazar Gelt as well, a Lore of Metalcaster as the Lord. Both on foot, which I don't hate in a map like this. There's really no reason to put Balthazar Gelt or this Bright Wizard up on a Pegasus, let's say, and expose them to the type of risks that usually entails. Vampires could very easily have Terrorgeists, something like that, and save the gold, get increased width on your front line, or more artillery pieces, or what have you. But this was something that kind of led me to believe that this player was maybe a bit newer right off the bat. As I looked around quickly to surveil, what people were doing, I noticed that he took all of his spells, right? There's almost never going to be a battle on these types of funds, lower funds, where you can afford to take every single spell in the Lore of Fire and the Lore of Metal. A lot of these spells do the exact same thing, just in different forms. And what I'm looking at here is probably about 600, 700 gold completely wasted. And 700 gold is another unit of swordsman and another spearman. So to give you a general idea of just how much gold was left on the table here, you could have easily taken something like Final Transmutation on Balthazar Gelt as one spell, and then because you're going to be fighting vampires potentially, on the Bright Wizard, let's say you get the Flaming Sword of Ruin, a great spell, and maybe Fireball, and you cut all those other spells, and each one of those spells is, on average about 100 a piece. Some are cheaper, some are much more expensive in the 200 plus range. So I mean, there could easily be enough gold left here to get another unit of Empire Knights, another artillery piece, something like that. for sure. So that was kind of a giveaway to me that this player was newer. I like their attempt to take advantage of this high ground, but you'll see here their positioning somewhat poor, although their game plan was solid. It was just a little bit lacking in the execution. Now the vampire player is going to do something very dangerous. They're going to blob up all of their units in this straight line as they attempt to come and meet this Empire player. So the Red Duke for the Lord, I'm going to try and very quickly introduce them. He also took a ton of his spells. He has almost all of his abilities, Elseef, all of his regen abilities. On the Black Dragon he does cause terror, and the Red Duke is a very powerful caster and a very powerful duelist. His summoning zombies is going to be very impactful this game. He does have a unit of Hex Wraiths, which is going to charge this Empire Knight, which is facing the wrong direction, and the Empire player is not paying attention, presumably. This is a terrible matchup for the Empire Knights. These guys do magical and fire damage, and they're ethereal, so they have really high physical resistance, so Empire Knights aren't going to do anything to them. They also have a Mortis engine. For those of you who aren't aware, they do drain life from nearby units in an AoE, and they heal undead units in an AoE, and they're particularly effective in conjunction with ethereal units like these Karn Wraiths here. With their lower model count and low hit points individually for each unit, they really benefit from any type of healing and resurrection. You'll also see Grave Guard mixed in with Skeleton Warriors. I like that. Mixing in chaff with higher cost units is a solid strategy. The Sternsmen are nearly an auto-include in every vampire lineup. They have their own regen, and they're a tier 9 basic Graveguard unit, excellent anti-infantry, but that regen almost always ensures that they're the last units left on the battlefield. More zombies trickling in, very slow, and going to make a huge impact this game. These two Banshees. If there's nothing on the field that deals well with ethereal units, Banshees can go the distance. They'll fight until the end. They do have an encouragement aura, and it looks like he took Slippery. I'm not able to click on them, unfortunately, and read these little tooltips here. But if I remember right, the name of the ability is something like Slippery. It's a little shroud on the bottom left, and it increases melee defense, and I think it adds a stalk mechanic, if I'm not mistaken. So here, this is where things start happening very quickly. The Red Duke comes in and starts taking handgunner fire. Good play by the Empire player, focusing down the Red Duke, chasing him back off, and he just takes a huge amount of damage, almost 4k damage there. Brings his leadership down to half. Meanwhile, the mortars are able to fire into these huge blobs. The Empire Knights get crushed. He's bringing up his Bright Wizard, and he's going to get an excellent flaming head. It's going to do some good damage. Might have wanted to wait until they were completely engaged, because he is bringing his state troops forward, and unfortunately not focusing down this Mortis engine with his handgunners. It's the perfect target. Right now it's draining life, it's leeching life off of all of these units, and it's healing all of the vampire units. And in a blob situation, that's great. He has the tools to take it out. He just needs to use it. Meanwhile, the Red Duke is going to be flying over, casting spells. No doubt invocations of Nehek to heal, and eventually he's going to work his way to summoning zombies. Now the steam tank was kind of late getting to this fight. It's an excellent artillery piece. There's no reason to run it into melee. He could just park it back here and shoot at the Red Duke and do a ton of damage. Unfortunately, the Hex Wraiths have gotten into the handgunners after wiping out those Empire Knights, and the Outriders with the grenade launchers, had they parked here on this slope, they would have gotten an excellent angle of fire onto these undead, and they would have crushed them. Now the mortars are doing great work. This is the exact type of engagement that the mortars want, firing into huge blobs of units weak to fire damage and AoE damage in that way. Also, this unit of spearmen and the swordsman unit just kind of stood by while these Hex Wraiths demolished these handgunners. He is sort of defending them with the grenade launchers, but that's a bit of a misuse of that unit. A lot of their DPS comes from hitting blobs of units, they would have been perfect up here against the vampires. And unfortunately for the Empire player, his units, without any kind of support, no encouragement buffs, the Bright Wizard and Balthazar Geld are too far away. Without bringing them forward, their leadership is such that they're going to rout. And once they begin to rout, they're really not going to stop. Once the Empire units start to rout from the fear and terror caused by these units, they're going to start running and they're going to get chased down by all of these low-tier chaff units. And you're going to see a lot of units of the Empire get chased off the field with half health. And that really didn't need to happen. Now he is managing to take down these hex raids, which is great. But it's one of those things. It's like a little too late. They pay for themselves. 165, 66 kills, most of it handgunners and Empire Knights. They were very cost effective. An Invocation of the Heck on them is keeping them alive. Steam Tank here was able to somewhat protect the back line, and now it's going to engage with this blob in melee, having shot off maybe one of its cannonballs, and that's just a poor use of the Steam Tank. They're such a good unit, and if you pair them with a Lore of Life caster, you can really negate that 10 melee defense, which is pretty poor, by giving them regrowth. And don't ask me how it works out logistically that you can heal the tank, but the ward save is excellent for them. They used to have an innate ward save, but they felt that that was too strong at CA, I suppose, and they nerfed them. I don't know if anyone was calling for a nerf on the Steam Tank, but they certainly did it. Here you see some beautiful mortar shots, but it's just a little too late. He needed to keep his infantry in the fight. He needed to get better spells cast with this Bright Wizard. He does have Piercing and Flamestorm, two very good AoE spells that kind of sit in one area and do damage very well, as opposed to that Burning Head, which kind of passed through a lot of units but didn't really kill any of them all. And the Red Duke has managed to heal up quite a bit. He does have a lot of regen. And there you see a beautiful breath attack going down, dunking these swordsmen, taking out this mortar. And with one breath attack, he's going to put his kills up to 97. And yeah, it's going to be taking these guys offline. The mortar still had a good bit of damage that they could have done. But once they start to rout, once Balthazar Gelt himself starts to rout, he's at 57 kills, which is pretty good. He might have cast a spell that I missed. The Vampire player felt confident enough here in their ability to finish off the Empire player that they sent away one of their strongest units, the Grave Guard with great weapons, to come here and engage these Broken Tusk Mob from the Orc player, who I'm just about finished decimating with my Dwarven build. You'll see how low all of these units are. They're low, a lot of them are crumbling, their leadership is nearly gone, but a few Invocations of the Heck overcast on this blob is going to bring them back to fighting shape just in time to engage me. Unfortunately, the Empire player here, despite having, in my opinion, maybe the perfect anti-vampire build against what this player brought, and I say this player, his name was Malictica, had really the perfect build to counter this. It was just his positioning that was poor. Had he taken up this ramp defensively, maybe kept a unit of spearmen here, parked the grenade launchers behind here, the steam tank on an angle to shoot in, and then just used his Bright Wizard to nuke down those low tier vampire units as they climbed up this hill. He almost executed it, he just not quite. And the steam tank, being unbreakable, is going to fight to the end here. A lot of these units are crumbling, but the Red Duke is nowhere near his exhaustible Winds of Magic. He's going to be able to cast more healing, and he's going to get a lot more zombie summons off. The Mortis Engine had no damage done to it whatsoever. There are certain units that you want to prioritize, especially when you're fighting the vampire count, and the Mortis Engine is top of the list. This is a unit that gets more and more value the longer it's on the field, and taking it out early allows you to disintegrate a lot of these vampire units. They really want to huddle around it, and people forget that it also does damage. I mean, this thing has 190 kills. That's mostly state troops, and I don't even know if that counts, that takes into account all of the damage and the damage it does, and then you add to that the amount of healing that it'll do when it's brought back here to this blob. So yeah, at this point it's just a matter of chasing these units off the field. He's effectively using his Banshees. This is a great use of them. Kills Balthazar. Now any hope these units had of rallying is going to be crushed. The Mortis engine does cause terror. I don't know if it had these 2 chevrons before it started, but now it's at over 200 kills. So it may very well have earned these chevrons in this battle. It does cause terror, so it's just going to easily chase these units off the field. They're not coming back. It's just a matter of taking out the steam tank, not losing too many more units. The steam tank, up to 129 kills. Had it been used a bit more efficiently, I would expect it to be at around 200 right now, just from making use of its range. Now you see it's very cool animations in the steam tank as it's in melee. The actual turret on the top continues firing. See if we can get a burst of steam there. Pretty cool. And it's not like a cannonball. And the steam tank goes down. It's actually steam. It shoots hot steam and damages enemies. So no doubt the vampire player has looked across at what I was able to do to the orc player, and I've utterly crushed him. There's nothing left for him here. And if you watch the first video, you know how the rest of this shakes out. But I'm consolidating my forces. I'm going to get a pick on this Grave Guard unit. He's going to attempt to recall them, but it's a little too late. I have the mobility in these gyrocopters to harass them and bring them down. And what he's doing now is very smart. He's bringing his units together. I'm pretty sure we just missed an invocation of Nehek. The Red Duke is almost at his healing cap. That's the bar here on his health. That appears once a unit has been healed enough, reaches their limit, and then anything beyond that they won't be able to regen. And that's very important to note when you're fighting vampire counts, as a lot of their strategy revolves around their ability to heal. Getting this pick was huge. That might be the second strongest infantry unit that he has left. He does still have the Stearnsmen here. Nearly perfect health, and they're going to continue to regen. They're nowhere near their healing cap yet. They're going to regen, they're going to gain models. Some skeleton warriors. He does still have these Cairn Wraiths, which I'm eyeing. The Cairn Wraiths do magic damage, and the dwarves are innately resistant to magic. So they're not going to be very effective offensively, but they do have armor piercing, so it's kind of a give and take. They're going to lose some DPS and gain some DPS. But they are very susceptible to my Runes of Wrath and Ruin, of which I only have 1 left on this very hurt runesmith. So I'm going to hold him back in reserve and count on him to get off his last Rune of Wrath and Ruin. So the Red Duke comes here, looking to get off a breath attack, and he does on my Iron Breakers. And you'll see there, it doesn't really hit square. It only hits 3 or 4 units, and they get right back up. They are resistant to magic. Yeah, gotta love Iron Breakers. They just shrugged that off. Meanwhile, our Rangers were firing some of the last of their ammunition. They only have 2 volleys left, and they took the Red Duke down just a bit more, which is going to allow for him to actually reach his healing cap. And he's got his units grouped. They're grouped around the Mortis engine. The Mortis engine is going to be healing them up once they kind of congeal a bit better. And here we go. It's the final fight. My gyrocopters are just now finishing off these graveyard with no losses whatsoever. I managed to do this kind of beautifully. I used some of my remaining ammunition to pick them off as they ran, and you'll see their bodies kind of strewn across the ground. And then when they started to crumble, I went in for charges with my gyrocopters that no longer had ammunition. So getting them off the field, they're very powerful against the dwarves with their armor piercing. So I was happy to get that pick. And at this point, I was very confident. I was thinking there was no way I was going to lose this engagement. I still had my Scolder Guard, and you'll see here they're going to take some beautiful shots on the Red Duke. I think my downfall, my ultimate downfall as this battle engages, is that the Red Duke had to use so little of his Winds of Magic and breath attacks to defeat the Empire unit that by the time he got to me, his most powerful assets were still in play. Had the Empire player made better use of his Winds of Magic and his ranged units. For instance, the Mortis engine probably would not be here. Or at the very least, he might even still have some units left on the field. The Vampire player might have retreated, or they'd still be duking it out, and I would have been able to advance on him. So the Vampire player sees my Rangers out of ammo. They're decent melee combatants, and he swoops down, looking to take advantage. My Gyrocopters are going to engage at some point. I want to pin in this Mortis engine because I want to use my Shoulder Guard, which were mocked up with zombies, now cleared out by the Slayers. I want to pin these units in. I want to pin in the Red Duke. I want to pin in the Mortis engine as the Dwarves. Use my Slayers and my Shoulder Guard to do the high damage that I need them to do. And the Red Duke here is in a tough spot. You may not realize it yet because it's kind of hard to tell, but now the Slayers are in the mix. The Shoulder Guard has been freed from the zombies and is free to fire. And the Gyrocopter's cycle charging is going to keep him on the ground. And once he reaches his healing cap, you'll see his health is dropping. Slayers are hitting him. He's regening, but it's not getting him anywhere. Healing cap is doing great. I was able to get a Rune Wrath and Ruin off before my Runesmith started to run. And these Iron Breakers are just going to absolutely tank these Karen raids. The Sternsmen, unfortunately, Slayers are not good against armor. Slayers are pretty much always good, but they're not meant to fight armor. The Sternsmen have 90 of it. So, at 150 kills, I was using them to chop up zombies and free up my back line. We'll see here, he's about to go down the Red Duke. He tried to escape, but there's really no escape when I have 2 units of Gyrocopters, even though one of them is going down here. The Shoulder Guard are attempting to hit them. I'm not sure what's wrong with the line of sight. They might actually be trying to hit the Mortis engine. And there we go, the Red Duke goes down. I love this shot with the Gyrocopter burning on top of him. The Shoulder Guard are shooting now point blank into the Mortis engine, and I don't think there's really anything the Vampire player could do about it. He could pull it out and try to hide it, whatever. But if it's not in the fight, then it's not getting value, and it's over 300 kills. That is full potential on a Mortis engine for sure. And Ungrim was in there getting drained, unfortunately, but his anti-large is what was ultimately able to help me burst down that Mortis engine so quickly so that it couldn't regen itself. I just noticed the animation on Ungrim. He does the base Slayer animation, which is kind of ridiculous considering he has one giant axe, and he does his death blow animation as if he is dual wielding 2 smaller axes. That's a little strange to me. The Slayers fighting to the last man, the literal last Slayer. You can watch him karate chop, fight some Sternsmen. He's taking a beating. Will he get any kills? No, he gets decapitated. He performs his death blow, and he doesn't kill any of the Sternsmen with his death blow. I think the saving grace ultimately, aside from the fact that the Vampire player was able to overwhelm the somewhat poorly prepared Empire player despite having the perfect build, he was able to bring a lot more resources than maybe he should have been to my fight. And these Banshees in the late game, once you run out of resources to stop them, for instance, I had no more shots left on my Shoulder Guard, Ungrim is dead, my Runesmith had already used all of its abilities, my leadership is gone. I had a Thane that tanked quite a bit in the early fight, and there he is running. Once Banshees make it to the very late game, they're super hard to take out. Not a lot of units can get through that kind of physical resistance. Something that could have been very useful, and it's one of those things that's hindsight 2020, but it's a definite mistake for the Empire player to have brought all those spells. There's no reason for it. With that many spells, he could have easily afforded, let's say, the Regiment of Renowned Handgunners, the Silver Bullets, who have magic damage and stalk. So they stay hidden until units get close, until you basically want them to start firing. and then they, with their magic damage, just a few volleys on Banshees, Cairn Wraiths, Hex Wraiths, or the Mortis Engine, they can absolutely dunk it. So here, a very smart play by the Vampire player. He got one of his Banshees up and around the backside of the Iron Breakers, giving it the penalty attacked in rear, and that's going to lower their leadership a little bit. And I'm rear charging here with the gyrocopters, and I'm attempting to break the leadership of the Sternsmen. The Sternsmen are just so sturdy, and I nearly do it. If I had just a little bit more left on the field, I might have been able to do it. And you'll see a point here where I do manage to drop them down past critical binding into crumbling, and that's what you want to see. You want them to crumble, but at that same time, my dang gyrocopters waver and break. So the crumbling disappears, they go back to critical binding, they're no longer losing health rapidly like they were, and they're able to stabilize. And even though my gyrocopters come back, the damage is done. The Sternsmen with their anti-infantry bonus, you see it's part of their weapon strength. For some reason it's letting me click on them now, and I think it's because Ungrim is dead. I wish CA would fix that. I'm sure that's not working as intended. Bonus versus infantry of 8, armor piercing damage of 8. So they're pretty good at fighting the Iron Breakers here, which is really all I have left. I've continuously brought in the Scolder Guard, but it was not enough. The Sternsmen and 2 Banshees are enough to take it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this second part of this awesome battle. And yeah, let's go into the score screen and see how it broke down. I avoided looking at it yesterday to not spoil the surprise. So let's see here. The Empire player, these numbers look okay, but you have to remember he was fighting zombies and skeletons. 1 or 2 well-placed vortex spells would have just destroyed so much of the vampire forces, especially the way they blobbed up. The mortars did work. 259 kills is what I would expect to see. Steam tank, once again, a little bit of criticism. Could have done better. The grenades could have done better. And these Empire Knights were sacrificed for no value. One of these handgunners ended up in melee against the Hex Wraiths. So, Winter Scientist, I don't want you to think, I'm sure you won't see this, but if you ever did, I don't want you to think that I'm just dumping on you. It was just a lot of mistakes of a newer player to my eye. And we all have to learn from our mistakes to get better. And, you know, you lose a group of Empire Knights to some Hex Wraiths, and you don't make that mistake again. Next time you run your Empire Knights back and you save them. So let's also take a second to look at the Vampire player. The Red Duke did great. He probably used every bit of Winds of Magic available to him, all of the zombie summons. Banshee's full health, not much to say about that. These chaff, they did their job. They died so that units like the Sternsmen and this unbelievable, it got up to rank 4. That's crazy to me. And these ethereal units could live. They took all the shots, they ate the mortars, you know, they surrounded the steam tank, and because of that, these very expensive units were able to survive. So I was a little bit in shock that I lost that fight, but I was very happy with the way it ended. The Vampire player ended up getting quite a few points off of my Iron Breakers at the end there. A lot of my units that were left were very expensive, like the Scolder Guard. I don't know what I could have done differently there. This is, in free-for-all, there are points rewarded for the amount of units you have at the end of the battle for the winner, which usually helps. Usually the person who wins the battle is the person who wins the free-for-all, if that makes sense to you guys. So you could potentially win. You could come in second place, let's say, but you kill the most units, and you could still win the free-for-all. It prevents people from hanging back and trying to wait until all the other 3 armies are done killing each other and then swooping in and getting a bunch of points. And I think that's a pretty good system. But able to just get a ton of points off the Empire player, and then all I had left were very damaged, very expensive units, which he was able to get quite a few points off of. So very good play to him, Malactica. Thank you to Winter Scientist and Big Money Salvia for this great game. And guys, my name has been Brett. Good Talk Gaming is my channel. And please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And hopefully, if you enjoyed this video, I will see you in the next one. Thank you guys. Have a great day.